Hi everyone, thank you for joining me today. In this really short video, I'm just going to talk you through a piece of software called Whiteboardfi that we could use in some of our live lessons as a really nice opportunity to engage our students and to get a really good insight into their understanding and learning of particular points of our lesson. So I hope that you'll enjoy listening to me today as I talk you through. So what I want us just to think about is I'm just going to introduce Whiteboardfi as an extra tool that could be used to enhance live teaching, and I've included a little demonstration of how it could be used in a live lesson. Well, what is Whiteboardfi? Well, Whiteboardfi is a program that can be used in a live lesson to give students their own show me board. Just as in a real classroom, the teacher can then ask students to record answers on their whiteboard as a quick and easy way to assess their understanding. So just how you might use a show me board in a classroom, you can use Whiteboardfi for your live remote teaching. And I have had a little go with some of my classes, and just to give you a quick glimpse, in my lesson for my Year 9s on biomimicry, we've been talking about how you can use structures and ideas from nature in engineering and architecture, and I asked my students just to draw me a quick picture of the Sydney Opera House. So you can see this, I took a screenshot of some of the things they've drawn. Some of them got used to the tools a bit easier than others, but you can just see it's a really nice interactive way for me to see what they were doing. Well, why would I use Whiteboardfi? Firstly, it is quite fun. My students found it quite engaging, and we know that we're trying to keep our students interested and participating in our lessons. But it's more than just a bit of gimmicky fun. Actually, it is really helpful for subjects where answers might not be in plain text. So I know we're asking students to contribute through the chat function, but for many subjects that's really not very helpful. For example, in science, if we're drawing organic structures, in maths where you want to write more complicated expressions, in MFL where they're struggling with accents and things like that, or in DT where you want more sort of complicated design. And that's just a few of the first subjects I thought of. So anytime when you're struggling to get students to write plain text in the chat, you might find this helpful. It also allows you to see all student responses at once. I don't know if, like me, you're struggling to look at the chat and think about some of the answers that have been given. Actually, you get to see all of them in front of you all in one go, like you would with a show me board in school. And it allows you to highlight really good answers to model to the rest of the group. So we know that modeling of really good answers is a really helpful tool while our students are remote learning. But if you're finding the cognitive load of live teaching quite high, you might not be ready to add in an extra level of complexity. So please don't worry, this is not a necessary thing. This is just an add-on, something you might try if you're an adventurous sort of person and you feel like you've got the hang of the live teaching. Otherwise, please feel free to ignore and just spend your time really getting to grips with the basics of Zoom. And another caveat is that it does work really well for students on laptops, but it is a little clumsier for students working on a mobile phone. So you might not want to base your whole lesson around it, but it is a nice little extra tool if you wanted to use it. So let's look at getting started. Well, first of all, you need to register, and it's free for a basic account, and you just go to Whiteboardfi. Registration is very quick and easy. And once you've logged in, you get given your teacher dashboard that looks like this. So if you wanted to use this in a lesson, you need to firstly create a new room. And you can see that I have highlighted how you do that there. Now this creates a temporary new room. So here you can see the button, Create Temporary New Room. And with the basic free version, your room is open for 2 hours. So you do have to be careful about the timing of when you're going to use it. It stays live for 2 hours and then it goes, and all of the information disappears. So we don't have to worry about privacy and GDPR and things like that. All of it just disappears. So when you've opened your temporary room, it will give you a link to that room, And I suggest you put that in the chat of your live lesson when you're ready for the students to start working on their whiteboards. I wouldn't recommend putting it in class charts because it's a bit like then handing out worksheets too early in your classroom. The students start fiddling and not paying attention to what you're trying to tell them. So you hand it out just at the right time. And I'd suggest you do that. So put it in the chat when you're ready for them to start using this piece of software. They can then click on that. They write their name. And I suggest you tell them to write the name just as exactly as it appears on Zoom. They don't need to fill in any registration at all. They write their name in and then they are good to go. So there's a few other tools that you might be interested in. When you've opened your room, you'll get a dashboard that looks like this, and there's something that says toggle my whiteboard. So if you wanted to write your question on the teacher's whiteboard, you could do that there. But you don't need to. You could always ask the question just live and then they can write their answers on their whiteboard. You ask the students to log in their whiteboard and you'll start to see them appearing at the bottom of your screen. So you can see I've done a screenshot here and I've got one student in this class and their little whiteboard has appeared at the bottom. And just a handy hint, while this is going on, you might want to stop your screen sharing in Zoom, and that makes sure that you retain control of what they can and cannot see. So I just thought I'd do a quick run through of some of the tools that you might like to use. Well, toggle my whiteboard, this gives the teacher a whiteboard. So if you want to write a question or put a task on this, then students can complete that. Otherwise, you might just want to ask the question live in your lesson. So the toolbar at the top contains some of the basic editing tools, so they can add text, straight lines, or freestyle drawing. It's fairly straightforward. There's a push button for the teacher, and what this does is this pushes the contents of whatever the teacher has on their whiteboard to the student's whiteboard. So if you wanted them to add detail to something you'd already prepared, you could use this button. The student whiteboards, well, these all start to appear at the bottom of your screen as they log in. And if you click on a student's whiteboard, it allows you to do a few things. Firstly, it allows you to show this answer to the rest of the class. There's a button also that is the Actions button. And if you click on this on a student's whiteboard while you have opened it up to the full screen, you could then clear that whiteboard if you wanted the student to have another go at something. But there's also an option there to kick the student out of the session. So if they're not using their whiteboard appropriately, you can remove them from that part of your lesson. So if you're still listening, on the next slide, I'm going to give you a quick run through of how you might like to use it. Okay, so if you've created your account and you've logged in, this is what's called your teacher dashboard. So you're going to go to the Create a New Room button. And with the basic version, you're going to create a temporary room, and this will stay open for 2 hours. So you've got a little bit of time before your lesson to get a few things ready. So you can see it's opened up my temporary room, and I have got here the link that I can give to my students, and I'd recommend that you give this to them in the Zoom chat on your Zoom live meeting, because if you put it in class charts, then they'll click on it and they'll be getting going before you're ready for them. So I'd put this, when you're ready to use the whiteboard, put this in your Zoom chat. So you can either copy it to the clipboard or you can copy and paste it in. Now you'll see that there is a button at the top called Toggle My Whiteboard. So this opens up the teacher whiteboard if you would like it. Now, if you had a particular question that you would like your students to answer, you can write it here. So I'm going to ask my students to do something, and I would like them to draw the structure of e-theme. Now you can start to see why this is quite useful for subjects where our answers might not be plain text, because it's actually quite hard to do this in the chat of Zoom. So you'll see up in the top right corner, there's a button that's called Push. Now this pushes your question to the students' whiteboards. You don't have to do this. Draw the structure of ethene is a fairly simple question, but if you had something a bit more complex, then you could push this to their whiteboards. So I'm going to press Push. This will put this to my students' whiteboards, and then we're going to have a look at what they can see. Okay, so that's pushed my instruction to my students. Now, if I scroll down, I can see that I've got 2 students in my lesson today. One who's a very good student who I can see has done exactly as I've asked, and one who is a slightly cheeky student. So what I can do is I can click on my very good student, and if I now want to share my screen, I can show everybody in the lesson what the correct answer is. If, however, I don't want to share the student's answer, then I might choose not, first of all, to be sharing my screen on Zoom. And if I want to do something about slightly cheeky student who's not behaving, then I can click on them. I can go to the actions bottom, and then I've got a few things I can do. I could erase their whiteboard if I wanted to, and if in fact I didn't want them to take part any longer, I could then remove that student from my class. So I'm hoping that you can see that it's a really fun thing to do. My students, my Year 9 students really enjoyed doing it. We didn't spend long doing it, maybe 10 minutes, but it gives you a really good chance to look at what students are writing, like a show me board would in class, and particularly good for those subjects where you're not the answers aren't going to be in plain text, when you're looking for something a little bit more challenging to write in the chat. Fantastic. Well, I hope that you have enjoyed having a little look at Whiteboard.fi. I have told you pretty much everything I know, so you might want to have a go at practicing with a friend and colleague and just using the tools and seeing how you get on. And I'd love to hear how you do.